Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host Jamie, pronoun she, they,
And I'm your co-host Spencer, pronouns they, them.
and this is Pixel Therapy. Let's start this episode, as we always do, with our Patreon shoutouts. This is our special thank you to everyone who's subscribed at our Patreon name in the credits tier. Specifically, everyone subscribed for the month of January. So that's a very big thank you to Lindsay, Pimhatai, CD Mess, Ava, Alexis, and Thomas. Thank you all so much for your support.
Thanks!
We appreciate it.
The inner circle.
Yeah, the inner circle. You can do a lot with your money and your time, and you're here choosing to spend some of that with us and on us. So thank you so much.
Mhm.
Remember, if you want to get your name in the credits, you can hop on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can subscribe for free to stay up to date on all things Pixel Therapy, or for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Patreon exclusive monthly bonus episodes. We kicked off 2025 with a January bonus episode doing our annual fantasy critic draft for what is now somehow the 5th year.
What?
I know,
Okay.
I still can't fully wrap my head around that, but yeah,
I already
5
have
years.
regrets about my picks, not
About
about
your
the 5th year.
about the podcast. You're like, "I
Oh
got
my
so
god.
many regrets."
Actually,
Oh boy.
no, it's not looking too good for my team, but that's okay.
Wait, why not? I'm not
I
remembering
just
enough.
I think it projected you at, like, double the score that I'm
Oh,
gonna have, but it's okay. We'll see
well,
how the cookie crumbles,
yeah,
you
what is
know?
Fantasy Critics now? They
Yeah.
don't know.
They
They're
don't
just
know.
guessing. We're all just guessing.
Yeah.
If you're looking for other ways to support the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. And you can also check out and subscribe to the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel, where we are continuing our unhinged Let's Play of Life is Strange Double Exposure. We've got one, maybe two more sessions left of that, and we've been playing that every other weekend. So if you want to check that out, head over to youtube.com/@pixeltherapypod and click that bell icon to get notifications whenever we go live over there or over here. You're watching this
It's
on
about all
YouTube
we can
now.
take
It's
of
about
that
all
one.
what, every other weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah. Max has some serious main character syndrome. Um,
We
so
have fun.
yes, we are having fun. I am having fun. Despite the game.
If you say it enough times, it becomes
I
true.
I
No,
am
I'm just
having
kidding, I'm kidding.
I'm having fun. Uh, of course, after all that, know that no matter how you choose to engage with us, we appreciate you being here all the same. It's time to get cozy, to pull up an armchair. Feel free to lie down on the couch. Let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, how are you this fine Sunday afternoon? The year of our
Bad.
Lord 2025. Yeah, yeah, bad. No, that's a valid answer.
It
Do you care to
feels
enough?
Sure, I'll elaborate. I'll try to elaborate without, like, bursting into tears.
Okay,
No,
okay.
I mean, everything's fine, everything's fine.
Well,
It's I think it's a timely playing this game right now, despite a lot of the backlash that it's gotten, some of which is maybe is more valid. I think a lot of people are saying it's a great RPG, but it doesn't feel like a Dragon Age game. Okay, sure, I'll take that. And then it ranges into like this game sucks because of woke, which is like nothing new really for any game that's come out in the past
yeah.
several years that involves like women or the barest whisper of like potential queerness. But regardless, it's been a scary couple of weeks for the trans community
Mhm.
here in America. And so I don't know where I was going with this. I think it's just I've I've I felt like this game has been a nice gift in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And yeah, it feels every episode we start by saying our pronouns, and that's such a small, thoughtless thing, or it has been for the past 4 years.
Mhm.
Sorry, saying it just now, I felt myself feeling a little hesitant Um,
Yeah.
and that's like what they want, right? Is for me to not feel comfortable
Yeah.
confidently saying who I am, even though I'm not hurting anybody by saying that. And so sorry, I don't know why. I think um
You don't need to
it gave me
apologize.
pause. It gave me pause to just say something as simple and normal as my pronouns are they, them, because of how
Yeah.
scapegoated and politicized it has become to be trans in America. Apparently, it's our fault that planes are falling out of the sky. And so, I don't, I really hope and pray that there's never a day where I'm too afraid to say that because of potential repercussions in a public space. But for now, something as small as that feels like resistance, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so it's felt good to play a game where, and we'll get into this, but trans identity isn't only mentioned, but I think it's one of the first times in recent memory where it's had a lot more nuance than I'm used to, and ability to kind of have control over what transness means to your character, and I've really just enjoyed that, and I I think um I think this is the first Dragon Age game where, regardless of your player's gender and sexual identity, it's like you can romance any of the companions. In previous games, it's like each companion had their own sexuality, so there would be some that were cut off from you based on your main character's identity. And I think typically I don't like that because it kind of feels like is it really representation if regardless of who you are, every character is into you? It's like it doesn't feel as powerful, I guess, or as real. But in this game, I haven't minded so much because I'm sick of the like already we're navigating a world where everyone's like mad at you for being queer and trans. So entering this world where it's like not only is it normal, but it's like not a big deal, and in some conversations with characters, it's even been really refreshingly comforting the writing in the game and how characters react to you being trans when you choose to disclose it to them, which is also an important choice that I appreciated. Um, all of that has just felt good to have a space where it's like I can be trans openly and like no one's mad at me. That's like great. Like just give it to me. I'll take it. So that's how I'm doing. How are you doing? How are you?
Uh,
That was a lot.
yeah. No, but yeah, I think if we're asking that question and genuinely expecting real responses from people these days, the honest answer is usually going to be a lot.
Yeah.
So at least
Welcome to
from
our show.
anybody that has a fucking heart at all
Yes,
in their
yes,
body. Um
yes.
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to belabor it. It's kind of grim right now in the US and has been for a
Mm,
long time, but
yes,
the
yes.
month of January, like not even the month, like the past week? What? He's been president
It's
for
been
2
like
weeks?
12 days or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hitting harder than I even imagined that it could have.
yeah.
Um, so many news headlines that I just look at them and I'm like, "Is this real life?
Mhm,
Um, is that The Onion? Or am
mhm,
I reading the actual New York fucking Times right now?"
mhm.
Um, it's scary. It's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I don't know. I'm just trying to focus on what I can control and the people that are in my life that I can affect and trying not to get completely fucking down in the dumps about it because curling up in the fetal position and crying until I die sounds pretty nice,
Mhm.
but is not gonna help me or anybody else ultimately. Um, so yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Last week was pretty bad. This week, I'm like my headspace is a bit better than it
Good.
was last week, and I'll take that.
Mhm.
Um, but
Hell yeah.
yeah, I never thought that it was going to be, that we were gonna live in a world where political revolution could be, like, putting pronouns in my bio. Like, I didn't think that was
Yeah.
gonna be the line that we were drawing in the sand, and yet, here we are. It's just frankly fucking ridiculous.
Mhm.
A lot of really important stuff that we could be putting time and energy towards, like, politically, and this is where our government
Agreed.
is throwing its energy. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all really
So,
harmful,
yeah.
but
Sorry to bring politics
yeah,
into your games.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if you're listening to this podcast and you weren't expecting that. Have you listened to anything that we've done? I don't think so. I mean, yeah. Okay, I think we should talk about Dragon Age Veilguard. I'm sorry, there's
I
no way to
guess. Yeah.
segue this. Like, there's no way to
Let's
segue it.
Dragon Age
It's
the Veilguard. What's that about?
it's our first public podcast since Trump took office, and we are thriving
Mhm.
here at Pixel Therapy. So let's talk about Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is a game that we played for today.
It
That we've
is.
put lots and lots of hours into. I think I'm approaching 100.
Yeah, I keep
Uh,
check every time I turn on my PS5, I go to my friends who play and I check on Jamie and I look at Dragon Age. I think last night when I looked, yeah, you were like approaching, I think it's at like 97 hours. I'm
yeah.
at like 82. So
Yeah,
we're
we're
like,
neck and neck.
yeah,
Who's gonna finish it first?
Jamie probably.
Spoiler: neither of us finished it before this podcast. So I guess
No.
I've only spent 97 hours in the game. You can take my opinion with that grain of salt. Anyway, let me preface what Dragon Age the Veilguard is for folks if this is not a game that's on your radar, or maybe you just need an overview of it. So, Dragon Age the Veilguard, released last fall, October 2024, came to PS5, PC, and Xbox Series X and S. This is the fourth major game in the Dragon Age franchise, and it's a direct follow up to the previous Dragon Age game, 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition. The Dragon Age series, in its entirety, is made by the Canadian game developer BioWare. They're known for their work making large, successful role playing games, such as Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and the Mass Effect
Hmm.
series. And since 2007, the company has been owned and had their games published by the American publisher Electronic Arts, EA, also known as EA. The Dragon Age series is set in the fictional fantasy world of Thedas, which a little factoid I learned today is that Thedas
Oh my
became
God.
the name because it's an acronym for the Dragon Age setting, which is really hilarious.
That is
um,
so funny.
yeah, and
Love
and
that.
each game in the series focuses on a different main character, but there are side characters, factions, and regions that are repeated across the series to create, familiarity across the games and build out the world. The gameplay mechanics also vary somewhat from game to game, but what remains core to the DNA of the Dragon Age games is a player-created character at the center of the story, building a party of companions, playing through combat that has usually a mix of action and strategy elements, and engaging in dialogue trees with non-player characters to make key decisions and influence the outcome of the story. So like the Mass Effect series and KOTOR, with Knights of the Old Republic,
Ah.
Dragon Age regularly presents the player character with this opportunity to make or influence key decisions that impact the state of the world or its characters. And even your more innocuous dialogue choices can have an impact on how your companions feel about you, creating dynamic relationships between the player and the NPCs in their party. The degree of player influence and agency has actually become a staple of the franchise and of BioWare generally. This was a big thing in the Mass Effect games too, getting to really build relationships with your companions and make key decisions that affected the outcomes of their stories and the outcomes of the game overall. Um, but the last decade has been pretty rough for BioWare, kind of across all fronts. They had two back-to-back, pretty, I think, poorly received releases in Mass Effect Andromeda, which came out in 2017,
Mhm.
and then Anthem, which came out in 2019. The fourth Dragon Age entry, that eventually became Veilguard, began development in 2015, only to be scrapped entirely 2 years later in 2017, reportedly due to the lack of a live service component, which EA was
Mm.
all about at the time.
Mhm.
Um, Development then restarted in 2018, now with live service and multiplayer in the mix for the game. But then after Anthem came out in 2019 and kind of failed spectacularly, and BioWare spent like a year and a half really struggling with Anthem to try to make that game work. I personally
Mhm.
played Anthem and thought it was a lot of fun, but it just did
Mm.
not have enough content for what they wanted it to be, which was a multiplayer live service game that you were going back to over and over again. It didn't have the
Mhm.
legs, but the gameplay was really fun. The story and content were lacking. They spent like a year and a half, almost 2 years, really trying to make that game happen. They couldn't do it. And so after admitting that the Anthem was really a failure in 2021, they went back to the Dragon Age team and they were like, "Never mind. Put all that live service multiplayer stuff aside. Let's just do a single player game instead." So basically the development of this game got kind of rebooted 3 times over the
Yeah.
course of the 10 years between uh Inquisition
Inquisition.
and Veilguard.
Mhm.
Um so all of that back and forth obviously resulted in significant staff turnover, particularly on the leadership at the leadership level, and to the extent that it's honestly impressive to me that we even got Dragon Age Veilguard at all, that we got a cohesive game. It
Yeah.
sounds like there was just so much back and forth happening in the studio, and the fact that like they fully pivoted the game away from a live service multiplayer experience in February of 2021. And then in October 2024, we got a complete single player game. So what they were able to do on the timeline that they did it is pretty impressive, but all that
Mhm.
development hell, I think speaks to some of the issues that we'll probably get into talking about with the game. Um, so the game comes out. It was broadly well received when it came out in October. It has an 80 on OpenCritic. It has mostly positive reviews on Steam. The general audience response has been a bit more mixed, like you kind of alluded to earlier. The game has these more inclusive elements, particularly two things that people have really focused on in their complaints have been the character creator and the representation of trans and non-binary characters. And that's garnered the unfortunately predictable at this point wave of bigotry and hatred. There was review
Mhm.
bombing. But set all that criticism aside, because that is disingenuous and not valid. Um, there have also been legitimate critiques from long-term Dragon Age players who don't feel that the game um, is in line with the Dragon Age series that they've come to love. And so we may talk
Mhm.
about some of those critiques. We may have some of those same critiques ourselves, but I certainly am not interested in even remotely entertaining the anti-woke conversation happening around the game. That's just an unfortunate piece of bullshit that's
Yeah.
happening on the
It's
internet.
depressing how many posts I see on Reddit that are like on the Dragon Age Veilguard subreddit that are like, "Oh my god, it took me forever to buy this game because all the reports I was seeing about how wokeness destroyed the game were, like, really putting me off," and I started playing it, and I'm like, "I have no idea what these people are talking about." It's not even that, but, like, it's totally fine, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh," it just sucks how much this vocal minority affects perception and drives
Yeah.
people away. I mean, it's validating that they get into it and they're like, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem regardless, but it's still validating for people to be like, "Oh, I'm a straight woman and I played this game and I didn't think like it wasn't even that queer. It's fine." I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess that's
Thanks,
fine.
straight
I'll
woman.
take it." But at the same time, it's like from the vitriol coming out, you would think, we're like you boot up the game and someone pops out of your closet and force femmes you.
That's a program we need to get going. That's
Actually, let's roll it out.
that's I mean, technically, with those recent executive orders, like,
Literally,
I think we all might have been force femmed or force non-binary. I've seen it both ways.
one of those, yeah.
One of those, but definitely nobody's a man. I can tell you that.
100%.
Uh,
Mm-mm.
anyway, jokes aside, my train of thought has derailed. I guess, yeah, I just wanna say one of the worst fucking things about the fucking anti-woke grifters is that there's the people who are legitimately assholes, like, pushing it forward this agenda, and then there's, like, your more casual, like, semi-online video game fan who, yeah, fucking sees this stuff and doesn't, like they start picking up some of these talking points without even, like, being able to articulate what the fuck they're saying because they've just
Yeah.
heard some YouTuber scream about it, and they're like, "Well, they're just forcing the woke stuff down our throat." And it's like, what does that
Mhm.
mean? What is
Right.
what does that mean? What does
Right.
that mean? And a lot of times, like, yeah, if you really press there's those people in that middle category, you can usually get them to, like, recognize that it's silly, but they'll still parrot this shit without even, there just becomes this general consensus that wokeness
Mhm.
is ruining video games. even though that's, like, totally based on this super racist, misogynistic, like, bigoted, hateful, like, ideology. It's yeah.
Right.
It's really fucking sad,
Mhm.
and I hate that anybody gets taken in by these fucking grifters, because
Mhm.
they are grifters. It's money. They're generating clicks and shit on their content. That's what it all
100%.
fucking boils down to. Anyway, getting off my soapbox. So, the response to the game, aside from all that bullshit, was pretty positive, as I said, has
Yeah.
been mostly positive. Broadly, people are enjoying the game, reviewed
Mhm.
well. So that response did not seem to warrant this series of events that we've had the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So first on January 17th, we learned that the Veilguard game director, Corinne Bush, was departing the studio. It's always a little bit concerning when you see your your game director leave. She had come in, I think, in like 2022 or 2023, and kind of seems like the person who really actually got us a fucking game, like came in,
Mhm.
took the reins, and got this game across the finish line to release, which also is part of what pisses me off that the anti-woke mob is like fully like blaming her for ruining the franchise.
Totally, totally.
Fucking ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't
Mhm.
even have this fucking game if she hadn't come in and taken over, but anyway, at least that's what it looks like. I mean, we're
Mhm.
all outside of this, but, like
And yet and it's hard to say, like, I don't know how much like, I don't know how much this is connected to the other news coming out of the studio recently, but I remember I believe she made a statement Corinne made a statement at one point saying, like, "It was my intention to join to complete this game
yeah.
and then move on to a new project," so, I don't know, but
Yeah, and
anyway.
when that initially happened, I remember my partner was like, "Oh, did you see the Dragon Age studio had left?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't really know how much stock to put in this, like, that's pretty common, especially for somebody who comes in the middle of a project, like and especially
Mhm.
coming into something that sounds like it was much of a shit show as this development was, like, yeah, why would you wanna stay, like,
Yeah.
you made it through, you put in those few years, you got the game across the finish line, then you know, and she said that she left for a different opportunity, so when just that
Sure.
news came out, it was a little bit like, "Oh, interesting,"
Well,
but it's
alright,
not
yeah.
5 alarm fire yet. But then just
Mhm.
a few days later, January 22nd, we get an EA press release, referring to the underperformance of Veilguard and disclosing that the game missed EA's internal targets by nearly 50%. They said they had 1.5 million players in the first 2 months, and they were expecting to have, at least 3 million. So that's concerning. And then the final nail in the coffin came this past Wednesday, January 29th, when BioWare's general manager, Gary McKay, announced in a blog post that, quote, a core team at BioWare is developing the next Mass Effect game. And, quote, given this stage of development, we don't require support from the full studio. The whole blog post, I went and read the actual blog post. It's like fucking
Yeah.
mealy mouthed as hell. But basically, it boils down to we're cutting the fuck out of our staff,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they they they've refused to share any specific numbers from BioWare or EA. So the details, we don't have full access to all of the details, but it's become clear in the aftermath of that announcement that the Dragon Age team has been essentially gutted. The entire writing team of Dragon Age: The Veilguard appears to have been laid off, and many of the other developers who worked on the game have either been moved over to comparable roles, focusing on Mass Effect, or shifted to other roles at other EA companies entirely, other EA developers. Were
Yeah,
you
I
gonna say
think I
something?
saw, I saw Jason Schreier report that, like, last year, BioWare had 200 employees, and now there's less than 100 fewer than 100 left, which
Yeah.
is really sad, and some of these writers had been on the staff for, like, 20 years, which is
Mhm.
just like, okay, this it's just that line of, "We don't require the support of the full studio," is so I mean, people who have built their entire careers with you, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tragedy. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, so the fan base is sitting here. We've got no DLC planned for Veilguard. We've got all this news coming out the last couple of weeks. We're understandably pretty concerned that the series of Dragon Age is dead. So makes it a pretty interesting time for you and I to be
Mm,
playing Dragon Age: The
mhm,
Veilguard and be planning an episode around it.
yeah,
We find ourselves here following all that news while putting almost 100 hours into the game.
yeah,
Pretty bummed out by everything that's been happening at the studio. I'm sure you are too. I wanted to kind of
mhm.
kick the conversation off and just ask, like, what's your history with BioWare and the Dragon Age franchise to date?
Yeah,
I
my
know this isn't your first
first
game.
Mhm. My first Dragon Age game was Inquisition, and I guess it's wild that that was 10 years ago now. And so I remember it fondly because it was really my first foray into this very choice-driven style of RPG, and it was definitely the horniest RPG I remember playing, and I think at the time, I appreciated, the representation of queer relationships. I hadn't really found that in many games at that time. I think there were problematic elements of some of the companion dynamics in Inquisition that I remember there being lots of inner fandom discussions about.
Mm,
So like, of course, I'm not saying that it's perfect. However, it was important to me at the time because 2015 was when I was really starting to come out myself and come to terms with my identity and sort of reaching a point where I wanted to um like come out and be so I think playing this game and being able to explore that and realizing like the choices I was making in the game um like, when you're playing a video game, you know, you can just like, if you're gay in a video game doesn't mean you're gay in real life. But there was something about it, it was like doing it in the game and the way it felt to do so in the game, I think I look back at that time and I feel like it also gave me something gave me a bit of strength to be brave enough to do it in my real life. And I think
yeah.
I remember at the time Inquisition having that kind of meaning to a lot of people. So, I was very excited for Veilguard. And I yeah, it has that significance to me. I was never a big Mass Effect person.
Mhm.
You were though,
I
right?
was, yeah. So I have a lot more experience with the Mass Effect series than the Dragon Age series. I mean, I did play Inquisition, but I could probably not tell you a single thing about that game. It's like I deleted
Mhm.
it from my brain. I
Yeah.
remember that I had a Canary Inquisitor. He
Mhm.
was a large man with broken horns, and I remember that I had a deer mount.
Oh,
And
cool.
that's about all that I remember. Oh, and I remember that I think I romanced Cassandra, which
Mhm.
I think in retrospect is perhaps a weird choice. She was very religious.
He was hot though.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I don't I don't remember really anything from the story of the game. And in fact, like when I picked up Veilguard, went back and had to like reread some things to like refresh myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I did play the shit out of the original Mass Effect trilogy and absolutely loved it. Tried to play Andromeda and couldn't get into it. It was also a technical mess when it first came out, which was one of the
Was
biggest issues.
Andromeda was Andromeda a new story, or was it, like, the remastered?
It was a new story. Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
the thing with one of the big key differences between Dragon Age and Mass Effect is, you know, in the Dragon Age series, you play as a new character each time, but you'll
Mhm.
meet people who you met in other game, like
Mm,
characters and places and factions will come back from the previous games. But in Mass Effect, what was, you know, so interesting about Mass Effect and something I'd never experienced before, and I'm not even sure, I don't even know if there's another game series that has attempted to do this? Someone comment and let me know.
mhm,
I can't think. But you are the same character across all 3 games in the trilogy. And
mm,
if you played them all on the same console, you could import your player created character and you would, you know, your Commander Shepard would be the Commander Shepard through all 3 games. You're playing
mm,
that same person with the same team of people. You know, some of the characters come and go, but it was really that was part of what I think made Mass Effect such a special experience is it was such a long time that you spent with those
yeah.
characters across, yeah, 3 games. Um, but yeah, that's, you know, that's my history with BioWare. I've always wanted to go back and play, Knights of the Old Republic because 'cause I've heard it's really good, but, it's so old at this point. I guess now they're technically remaking it, but see
Oh, shit.
if or when we get that. It's
Mhm.
not being done by BioWare, it's being done by somebody else. But yeah, so I had a lot of love for who BioWare was, back in the day, and, even though the Dragon Age series, like, didn't stick with me in that way, like, I like fantasy worlds, and I thought Veilguard looked cool in the lead up to it coming out, but I just don't,
Yeah.
I think in terms of, like, approaching Veilguard critically, I would say I'm coming at it more as, like, a new someone who's new to the
Mm,
franchise, for the most part, because I
okay.
really didn't retain a lot of what happened in Inquisition. In fact, I was very confused. I remember being confused by a lot of what happened in Inquisition because I hadn't played the previous games.
Yeah, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like with these games, I'm really in it for the relationships, like, that's
Mm.
where my bread and butter is, and the kind of lore and world building, I'm just kinda like, "Yeah, okay, something about a cult, there's some, like, dragons, blight is bad, let's go."
Here we go. So we already kinda talked about how much of Veilguard we played. I think we're both playing it on PS5.
Hell yeah,
Um,
brother.
what is your high level take of Dragon Age Veilguard?
Gorgeous
Mm.
game. I mean,
With a really
each
distinct art style, though, still in there. It's not they're
yeah.
not really going for realism. It's got a cartoonishness to
No.
it that I think actually allows it to
Yeah.
shine more.
Mhm. Yeah, it has like a softness. Almost feels like an animated
Mhm.
movie.
Mhm.
um, the the textures, like I find myself in cutscenes looking at like the stitching on clothing and the way the light is bouncing off of weapons and like gorgeous backgrounds and foliage and natural elements. So beautifully rendered. The worlds are all very like it's not totally open world. Um, you feel like there are definitely bounds to the areas in which you can explore. Um, a lot of it's there's a lot of kind of puzzle like navigation. Like to get to a certain chest, you need to find the right opening and figure out how to unlock a path and things like that, and so I find, like, I almost spend more time doing that stuff than, like, actual quests, so sorry, I'm supposed to keep it high level. My high level take, um, very beautiful game, I think, again, for me, the relationship building and sort of the enjoyment I get from discovering an area is almost more important to me than stuff like the combat or even really what's going on in the big picture level with the story. It's a game where I can spend 2 hours just sort of like exploring a very small area of the map, just trying to unlock everything, which is kind of rare for me because I'm someone who doesn't really I typically get kind of uh my attention span for, like, finding all of the treasure and getting all the achievements is, like, very short, but I find that I really just enjoy the time I'm spending in this world with these characters, like, listening to you have 7 companions, but at any given time, you pick 2 people to kind of be in your active party. Just traveling with different combinations of people, listening to their banter. Something I love about Dragon Age is your characters are constantly talking to each other, and so it's, like, just the immersion in that space of, like, you're just traveling with companions that you really enjoy being around, and you're just having conversations and exploring together. I think that's where I enjoy it the most. I think for me, some of the combat elements, some of the mechanic choices got a little frustrating for me, which I'm sure we'll get into. Um, and I may be getting lost a bit in the story because I don't have a full familiarity with the whole franchise. But I think for me, it really shines in those little moments and little interactions. And so that's my main takeaway. Um, Tell me about your high level take.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you just laid out there. I don't have a ton of strong complaints about the game. I also like I something I've been wondering as I'm playing it is if I played this last year, would it have been in my top 5? And I don't
Mm,
know for sure if it would have or not because there's a the game is super enjoyable to play.
mhm.
I've put almost 100 hours into it. I'm going to keep putting probably another 20 to 30 hours into it to get to the end. I'm doing everything there is to do in the game, and I'm having a hell of a lot of fun doing that.
Mhm,
I really enjoy the companions, and I really enjoy like what you're talking about, like kind of their conversations in the background. I'm finding the general quests to be interesting in terms of the narrative arcs. At the same time, it there's so much about it that is a video game ass video game that
yes.
it's it's so polished. It's
Yes.
like, and I don't know, this is maybe just a me thing, but it's almost like it's been so obviously designed to be, enjoyable, to be fun
Mhm,
and kind of pain-free
mhm,
that it's lost any
mhm.
friction that would have made
Yes.
me find it more interesting. It
Yes.
feels harsher than I mean it to because, like, it's not on the level of, like, a God of War, but I would say it's aiming to be more like I don't know, what I want from my AAA video game experiences is different than what I want from my gritty little indie game experience,
Mhm.
and I tend to, perhaps wrongly, overvalue the gritty little indie game experience that really made me think about a thing or, like, experience an emotion, in a really profound way. Like, that tends to be what I gravitate towards when I say, like, "These are my favorite video games," and so Veilguard is not doing that, but it is a really fucking good time,
Yeah, no, I think
which has value, like, it's not
yeah.
I don't know. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about it, is that I'm having a really fucking good time with it. At the same time, I don't think it's a game that I'm going to, like, hold up for years and say, like, "Oh, that was a
Yeah.
fucking video game," but
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. No, all of that, that really hits. I feel like there's a it's almost formulaic to a point where I don't feel like I'm accessing any deeper truths from it, or there's
Mm,
something about it that's not quite challenging me or reaching out to me and touching something raw and human inside of me. It's like I feel very much like I'm playing a game designed by professionals, like you
mhm,
said, like there are proven methods to have fun, and this game
mhm,
has them in it. There
mhm,
are I will get into later. I think there are certain character interactions that I think started to scratch at that for me, but even with other AAA titles, there's something it's doing. Like, I think Elden Ring, for whatever reason, is popping up in my mind, even though I couldn't spend that much time with it and it was too hard for me at the end of the day. Like, there was something raw and experimental still going on there that sort of pushed at what is a game and what makes a game, and how can something familiar also feel so different and exciting? And
mhm.
there's nothing is trying to break out of the box with Veilguard, and that's
Yeah.
okay. We can still have a great time
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I don't think it's, that's why I say it's like I don't think I have any super strong critiques of the game in that I would say the game is wrong for doing X or X was bad. And I don't think there's really, and we'll get into our as we go in through
I
our
do.
conversation. Okay. I mean, like, that's fine. I'm excited to hear that stuff, but I really don't know that, like, I personally have experienced anything where I'm like, "Oh, that was bad." I think
Sure.
that
Yeah.
um so for me, it's just like, yeah, it's just, it's almost overly polished or overly sanded down as to be, like, as
Mhm.
inoffensive and
Mm, mm,
palatable as
mm,
possible.
mhm.
And I'm enjoying that, but it makes it feel, like less like something that's gonna stick with me or that's trying to challenge me in any significant way.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I think we'll
Heard.
yeah, and I don't wanna belabor it before we get too much into, like, actually,
Sure. Yeah.
elaborating on what we're talking about, but yeah, anyway, that's where we stand. So I figured I'd start with, like, just a quick overview of the story, and then I wanna talk a bit about our rooks, and then we can start getting into, like, meaty stuff. Um,
Yum, yum,
so
yum.
yeah, all that meaty stuff. So quick overview of the story. And this is very brief. I'm really just teeing it up. This all happens within the first like 2 hours of the game. Um, you play as a character who it goes by the name of Rook. Your name is Rook no matter what. You can put in your own character name, but I don't even know why they let you because everyone in the game calls
I
you
don't
Rook.
is Rook like a code name? Like, I don't really
They
does
say
he
that,
have
like,
a
Rook is,
name?
like, what you go by. Like,
Okay.
it's just what you go by.
Okay.
So, like, I don't know why they let you pick a name, like, they should have just said,
Yeah.
like, "It doesn't matter, but you're Rook." Anyway, he plays Rook. Rook is this, blank slate player character, who starts the game by taking a job with Varric and Harding, which are 2 characters who have been previously featured in the Dragon Age series. And they're in pursuit of the elf Solus. Solus, has, I think been in, like, the background of other games in the series, but he's a
Mhm.
character who's specifically a companion, to the player in Dragon Age Inquisition. And then, sorry, spoilers for the 10-year-old Dragon Age Inquisition game.
Yeah.
In Inquisition, it's actually, like, one of the cooler things that that game does is that Solus, who is part of your party, one of your companions, actually betrays the team in the game and becomes an
Mhm.
enemy by the end of the game. So this game starts with, you pursuing Solus with Varric and Harding, and you're trying to stop him from performing this ritual to destroy the Veil. Now, Spencer, jump in here if you understand any of these things better than I do, but my understanding is that the Veil is basically like the doorway between our physical, like, quote unquote, real world and like the metaphysical spiritual world of the Fade.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
Solus is trying to basically blow up this doorway with his ritual, and I think that your characters are convinced that that's going to result in a bunch of demons, uh, running through the world.
Yeah, it's like yeah, destroying the veil will cut off access, but the process of doing that is gonna cause some apocalyptic event
Okay,
because it's
okay,
basically destroying
yep,
yeah, it's a destructive, violent event.
okay.
Some people will die, even
Some
if
people will die.
ultimately yeah.
Yeah. So Solus is doing this. Y'all track him. You're trying to stop him from doing it. And Rook actually succeeds in interrupting the ritual. But what they learn after doing that is that Solus was doing that because there are 2 elven gods, Elgernon and Gillinane, who are actually trying to escape the Fade. So that was why he was trying to destroy the Veil in the first place. And so by stopping him in the middle of the ritual, Rook causes basically creates events that allow for Elgernon and Gillinane to escape the Veil and start wreaking havoc in the real
Yeast.
world, or start escape the Fade and start wreaking havoc in the real world. And also subsequently, Solus becomes trapped in the Fade, through the way the ritual kind of goes belly up.
Mhm.
But Solus still has a sort of metaphysical spiritual connection to Rook, the player character, and throughout the game, you can interact with him and have conversations with him. And he will, you can choose to trust him, you can choose not to trust him, but he is invested in stopping the evil elven gods as well. And so he does have advice to offer on that front.
He's like your
Um,
bitchy
your
conscience.
bitchy conscience, yeah. Um, Varric is, who's kind of like the leader of the party, is seriously injured during the incident with Solus, and I don't know why Harding wasn't up for consideration to lead, but I guess Varric decides
Yeah.
that Rook is now the leader.
Yeah, that yeah, I was a little like, "The guy you've known for, like, 2 weeks? Okay."
Yeah. So Varric puts Rook in charge under Varric's like tutelage of how to be a good
Mhm.
team leader. And Rook then yeah, that now they're in charge of building the resistance against the elven gods. So the focus of the game from there is on Rook putting together a team of companions from across northern Thedas, engaging with the various factions across the land, all with it in the effort to thwart the gods' plans, prevent them from gaining power, and to ultimately defeat and re-imprison them. Um, the incidents I already said that about the link between. Sorry, got confused in my notes. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's the setup for the game, and you play as Rook putting this team together. I do think, I got over it pretty quickly, but the idea that Rook is like suddenly given all of this power to lead this
I
team
know.
without any real
Yeah,
real reason
like,
for
little
that
sus.
was kind of amusing to me. And I think that is one of the things that the game does that, again, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it's another way that I feel like the game removes friction when it could have introduced friction in an interesting and compelling way, which is that you are just in charge of everything. And any decision that's going to impact anything is in your hands to make
Mhm.
inexplicably. You
Yeah,
have full control. To
yeah,
like it's player agency, like complete fantasy fodder.
yeah.
Like
Everyone just implicitly
yeah,
trusts you.
implicitly trust like, you don't have to work to get any yeah, to get anybody's
Yeah.
trust, to get any to be, like, involved in anything. I mean, I guess that's not entirely true. There's, the all the stuff with the Grey Wardens and their captain, he doesn't wanna listen to you. Like, there
Sure.
are characters who don't, I guess, just implicitly trust you, but for the most part, you're put into a position of power pretty quickly, and you have a ton of agency within the world of the
Mhm.
game. And I don't think they really do anything to explain why that is, outside of that you happen to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
But
just
to
have that main character energy.
you just got that main character energy. But tell me about your rook. Who is your rook?
So my rook is a non-binary Kunari,
Nice.
and there are these factions within the world of the Veilguard. Um, so my faction is my rook is a shadow dragon, which seemed like the most cool faction to me. They all have like little descriptions in the character creator, and you can
Mhm.
kind of decide who you want to align with. Like, for example, the Lords of Fortune are like these treasure hunters who value like flashy combat, and they're like into partying and drinking. Or there's like the Antivan Crows, who are like this kind of like mafia style
Yeah,
assassin
assassin
like
cult. Yeah,
group.
their crew.
And then
Yeah.
the Shadow Dragons are like this organization that lives in the city of Minrathous, and they do like targeted hits on like corrupt politicians, and their main gig is like in the world of Dragon Age, slavery is still a rampant issue, and the Shadow Dragons go around and like liberate enslaved people and like kill, people who are enslaving other people. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, obviously, I'm gonna go with the people who are, like, going after corrupt politicians and freeing enslaved people."
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
my
you gotta tell me a
Go
bit
what were you
about
gonna say?
Canary as well. You mentioned that you're a Canary.
Okay. Yes, so Canari are these really hot they're like these
8 feet tall
tall
dragon people.
tall, muscular people rumored to be descended from dragons. They have horns, they have pointed ears, they're very strong, um, and yeah, so, like, I'm a Kunari mage, so I wield you can switch between kinda like a magic orb and a dagger for close-up content combat, and then a staff for more ranged combat. And my rook has ended up something I really appreciate is the flexibility with the skill tree, but I've ended up specializing in necromantic magic. So
Mm.
I do a combination of like sapping other people's life energy because I am constantly getting bodied in combat and I need more than 3 health potions, which is the max that you can carry in most cases. And they have really cool armor. It's like kind of like dapper, like also, I'm just super into necromancers now because we've been reading this series called The Locked Tomb, which is like lesbian necromancers in
Yeah.
space. So I think I'm just like
Yeah, I was like,
necromancy pilled.
I don't have time to replay this game, but there like my brain has certainly been like imagining the world where I do a replay as a necromancer mage
Yeah.
that I like design after like Harrow from the Locked Tomb
Yes.
series.
Yes.
I've been like,
Yes.
that would be fun. So like maybe I'll just fuck
Yes.
around with the character creator after
Totally.
I finish the game. Just, fuck
Especially
around with
because
that.
there's
Just for
lictors
science.
too
Like
in Dragon Age.
yeah, well there's liches, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's very similar.
Anyway, sorry, not to diverge into a totally different fandom,
Yeah, this
but
is now a
that's my
Lock Tomb
rook.
podcast. Y'all are just gonna have to read those books and get back with us.
Yeah. Um, I'm tall, I have, like, long braids, I have 1 broken horn, um, I'm really awesome, so that's my rook. Tell me about yours, which is, like, iconic because we ended up both having some things in common.
Yeah, yeah, our characters ended up more similar than I think we expected, but
Yeah.
honestly, who's surprised by this? Um, Sorry, I'm just adjusting my mic volume. Um, yeah, so my rook, is also a shadow dragon. My rook is also Kunari. Um, something that you didn't mention with the Kunari that I've always thought is interesting is
Mm,
that a lot of Kunari, like Kunari are raised initially, most Kunari are born and raised into like an organized religion that's incredibly like
mm,
strict. They follow
mhm.
this like religious text called the Kun. And I don't fully understand all of the lore around it, but it's just, it's like a very, very strict and specific religion that everyone's supposed to follow. And so you always have this thing of like whether or not your Kunari practices the Kun or whether or not you've broken away from it.
Yes.
Because I don't really know that much about the Kun. Like my
Great point.
my Kunari is like totally separated from that, but you'll encounter other Kunari in the world. And I think Kunari who like really religiously practice the Kun, they don't even leave the land where the Kunari live. So
Yeah.
most anybody
Mhm.
that you interact with has departed from the Coon in some fashion. But even in that sense, there's different factions of folks. There's the Antam are characters who are generally just antagonists in the game, but they're a Canary group that's like they've abandoned the Coon, but in its place, they're just like totally about warfare and violence and physical strength. Like that, they've decided that's the
Mhm.
only means to power, and so that's their whole thing is just focused on being strong and vicious and gathering power that way. But you'll encounter, other Canary who yeah, have different takes on things. I know the Canary are also, like, really, afraid or just, like, they don't I don't know if afraid's the right word, but they're not interested in interacting with spirits at all. Like, they don't think
Right.
you
They
should
don't
fuck with
love
the
that. Yeah.
Fade. They don't think you
Yeah.
should fuck with spirits. And so I had an interesting interaction, in my play session yesterday where I was interacting with a Canary who lives in Ravania and she is like a seer. She talks to
Mm.
spirits. And so I was like getting to ask her questions about like, yeah, so how do you reconcile that with like your Canary upbringing? So anyway, I think that's all kind of interesting and adds another
Yeah.
layer to who the Canary is. And generally I think like except maybe for humans, each of well, I don't know, the humans have a lot of interesting stuff around the mages going on, but
Mhm.
maybe they're the least interesting of the races that you can play as. But the races generally have like interesting lore behind them, about their history.
Yeah.
Um, so my rook, I was like, I'm fucking 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
I'm going to just wield a fucking two-handed weapon and bash the absolute
Nice.
fucking shit out of everything that comes in my
Yeah.
direction. And so that's what I've been doing. So I am not having the health issues that you are having. In fact, like I don't even know what those extra potions are for. Don't need 'em.
Wow,
Uh,
that's wild.
yeah, I'm very tanky, and, like, yeah, my main gameplay move is to just, like, get into the middle of 100 enemies and start, like, stomping the ground and swinging my big hammer around,
Hell
and
yeah.
then, tee everybody up so that my companions, can, like, throw moves at them that will cause them to detonate.
Mm.
So we can talk more about the combat here in a bit, but there's some cool, like, combo systems that they have in there.
Mhm.
Um but, you said some interesting stuff earlier that I'm hoping you're cool jumping right in with, but I really want to talk a bit about, um, the, you said that you've been able to, like, kind of, like, actually express your gender identity in the game through your character of Rook. Something that so when I designed my Rook, you have 3 pronoun choices, if I'm remembering correct. Like, you can be she, her,
Mhm.
he, him, or they, them. And I'm someone who uses she, they. Like, I do consider myself genderqueer, but, like, I don't know, I'm like, gender's fucking construct. So
Yeah.
anyway, I decided to just, like, put my rook in as she, her because I
Mhm.
was like, I don't know. I just that was what I made her. And I haven't felt that the game has given me really any opportunity to explore my gender identity at all in terms of how
Hmm.
like, I mean, outside of just, like, my own headcanon role play, but, like, there hasn't been anything in dialogue or
Mhm.
there's specifically a character in the game through which you can have conversations about trans and non-binary identity, but that's all been focused on the companion character. And it really hasn't been any opportunity for me to weigh in about how I feel about my my gender or
Mm.
my
Mhm.
representation at all. So I think it's interesting that you have been given that opportunity as somebody who chose they them pronouns and I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I wonder if this is a missable thing, but early in the game, so regardless of what pronoun set you choose, he, him, she, her, or they, them, in the very beginning of the game, when you first enter your personal quarters, which honestly you don't have much reason to go back to unless you specifically have to do a certain task in the game. Like there's no like I don't think I've gone back in like 40 hours to my personal quarters, but there's a mirror that Varric has given you, your mentor, that you have in your room, and in the very beginning of the game, you can go in your room and pick up the mirror, and if you do, it has this moment of reflection where you're looking at yourself. And there is one dialogue option you can choose that says something along the lines of, like you take a moment to reflect on like how far you've come as a person. And then within that tree, there is one option where you're like talking to yourself about your journey, and you can say like I'm trans or non-binary. And if you make that selection throughout the game, there then become opportunities to like extra dialogue options in certain conversations where it might be relevant for your um, lived experiences to be something to add to the conversation. And it could be things ranging from disclosing to a potential romantic partner if you choose that you are trans or non-binary. It could be there's one, as Jamie alluded to, there is a character who's specifically coming to terms with and struggling with what their gender identity is, and you can have extra dialogue options to kind of talk about that with them. There are other times where it's like, when certain situations or choices are being made, the fact that you've had to come to terms with who you are or embrace change or other experiences relatable to the trans experience, like you can kind of draw from that to add to the conversation. So yeah, it kind of expands and becomes this very three-dimensional thing. And one thing from the start that I really appreciated about that was it wasn't just like, "I'm trans, okay, end of sequence." It's like you choose to add that layer to your character's backstory that you are trans or non-binary. I also appreciated that, like, even if you're a character who uses she, her pronouns, for example, you could still be non-binary, which I think is another layer of inclusivity where
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like,
I totally missed
it's
this mirror. Like,
okay, okay,
never
okay,
interacted with that, have never gotten any of those
okay.
options to explore any of that
Ah,
in the dialogue. Yeah, so I'm pretty
damn.
bummed
Yeah,
at
they should
97
make
hours.
it more
I
obvious.
I know
Yeah,
the mirror that you're talking about, and I saw it sitting, like, it was, when you're decorating your room, it was a mirror you could put
yeah,
out, but I didn't realize I could then, after I put it out, like, go over and pick it up and interact with it in any way.
okay.
So,
So y'all
now I'm
interact
thinking,
with
I'm
that
like,
thing.
yeah, I gotta go pick up this mirror and see if that,
We
like,
have
does
to go
anything.
back. Yeah,
Start
yeah,
it over
yeah,
again, delete
yeah,
the
from the
saves,
top.
delete the, like, 63 save files that I've created because I'm unhinged and I can't
Yeah, I
overwrite
never
my
trust
saves.
autosave. Yeah, I just
They
have
they
to
gave me
yeah.
100 save files and I will use all
My
100.
God. Yeah.
God is my witness.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
man, I'm so bummed I missed
I'm
that.
bummed too. Yeah, it should be more accessible because yeah, like but it's added a lot of dimension to interactions in ways that I've
Yeah,
really
no, that sounds
appreciated.
really awesome.
So it's not just that you can say like I'm trans. It's like you follow up on that and the options are like allowing you to add nuance to what transness means to you in that first reflection. I think you can talk about how like I don't remember exactly what they are right now, but one of them is like, it's been a struggle. Like I I still don't know how I feel about my transness. One is like, I'm really proud of how far I've come, and one of them is like, like I've always known, and I'm unapologetic about it. And the importance of that is like everyone's journey is their own, and there are so many different ways to be trans, and it just felt I just really appreciated the fact that I was allowed to um say a bit more about what my transness meant to me and where I was in my journey. It wasn't like, "Oh, you're trans, so therefore you must be out to everyone and you must be, like, super happy about it." Like, there was room to kinda be like, "Yes, I'm trans, I'm admitting that to myself in this private moment, and it's something I'm still working through." That was just really cool. It was not just
Yeah,
one way to do it.
that sounds very
Um
cool. I wish I wish I'd gotten to interact with that.
Wish to be a part of that someday.
Yeah, cool. Well, because it was something that I felt like, you get, and I think I do you I think it's pretty if you've read anything about this game, you probably know the character we're talking about that goes on the journey. I'm just gonna start using their name because I feel
Yeah.
like might as well. It's, general caveat that we always put on our episodes. If you want to play this game without having anything at all told to you about it, then
Mhm.
probably don't listen to the podcast episode until you play the game. But we're not going to
Mhm.
spoil anything major or plot significant. So, anyway, the character is Tosh, who's also a Canary, hilariously
They're
enough.
also a non-binary
Yeah,
Kunari, yeah!
we're all just a bunch of, non-binary Canary out here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but Tosh actually gets a coming out story. When they originally join your party, they use she her pronouns, and they're struggling against their mom, and their mom moved them out of the Canary religion, but still like culturally has a lot of things that are very like strict and reinforces a lot of some of the Canary culture on Tosh that Tosh chafes against, and Tosh also feels like their mom doesn't perceive them the way they're meant to be perceived. And yeah, anyway, so they're going through this whole thing, and you can discuss that with them, and you can encourage them to navigate, encourage them in how they navigate the conversation with their mom, and you can't
Mhm.
like you can't stop them from
Yeah.
exploring their gender identity, which I think is good. I'm sure there are some people who
Yes.
would have been
Totally.
real assholes. And I
Yeah.
also I you can't even you can choose to not be super like in the dialogue trees, you almost always have 3 choices when you're responding to it, at least 3 choices, sometimes you'll have more, and usually
Mhm.
the 3 choices are they mark them with little symbols to kinda give you idea
Mm.
of the tone of it. You have a thumbs up, that's like a really it's gonna be a positive, it's gonna be supportive, like, you're emotionally available rook.
Yeah.
Um, there there's, there's, like, a little, like, comedy mask symbol,
Mhm.
and that means you're gonna make some sort of, like, half joke, like, you're gonna be
Mm.
slightly sarcastic. That is, surviving in modern times, rook. That's
Yeah.
Twitter rook.
Yeah.
Who just has to make a joke about it or they'll cry. And then you have, like, a sort of, like, beefy, like, armored symbol that's got its arms crossed, and that's, like, tough guy rook. Who's,
Mhm.
like, not really interested in getting emotional and just wants to move on. So
Yeah.
when you're engaging with Tosh and their conversation about their gender identity, you can choose kind of like the no nonsense version of that, but even the no nonsense version of that is not mean, it's not
Yeah.
harmful, it's not
Right.
telling Tosh that they can't express their gender identity or that they're wrong or anything like that. It's really just more like, yeah, no problem.
Mhm.
It's just like, we don't need to talk about this for an hour. That's great. Like,
Mhm.
I accept you. Let's move on. And I did see an interesting take on that because there were people who were like, "Well, I this is a game with choices, and I should be allowed to choose be a dickhead
To be an asshole.
to
Yeah.
Tosh for changing their gender
Yeah.
identity." And so it's like, I saw an argument. I think this might have been on Reddit. I apologize. I forget the person's name, but they were like, "Rook is a hero, and a hero is not going to be an asshole to somebody about their gender identity. Like,
Mm.
you're not role playing. You don't get to role play being an asshole in
Mm.
Dragon Age." You
Mhm.
don't get to role play being a bad person.
Mhm.
You get to role play, like, what shade of hero you wanna be, what type of hero
Mm.
you wanna be. And I think that's been pretty true for all of BioWare games. So,
Mhm.
anyway, I kinda derailed a little bit there, but
No, I like that.
I am curious, like, what your, what was your take on Tosh and that story and us getting to experience that in the game?
Yeah. So this is edging into one of my complaints.
Oh, let's get into
Not
it.
about and um it's not about
Was it too woke for you?
Tasha's this game was ruined for me because of woke. I draw
Well,
the
there
line.
is a contingent of the audience who, yeah, Tosh is really like one of the things that gets singled out in this game that people feel ruin the game.
Yeah. There's only room for one non-binary Kunari in this rodeo, honey. Um, so
Spencer
no,
can't
I
handle another. There can't be another non-binary Kunari on this team.
yeah.
We've got
I'm the
quota is met.
personality hire in this companion group. Um, no, I that part was I mean, as soon as we encountered Tosh and she turned around and was like, "Hey," I was like, "Oh, I love you."
Yeah, yeah.
um, and they've got this just really great deadpan. They remind me of you a lot, actually. Just their whole
I can see
vibe.
that. Yeah, they're very just like straightforward, no
Yeah,
nonsense,
blunt.
blunt. Yeah, like too
Heart of
blunt.
gold.
Yeah, yeah, heart of
Yeah.
gold, but like probably too blunt for most people. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes not picking up on social cues. Yeah,
Yeah, the best way
yeah.
possible, like, reminds me of Jamie, but, just I thought that a lot of the conversations you had with Tosh exploring their gender identity and what it means culturally and in their relationship with their mother, like, a lot of that really resonated, and I really enjoyed, the ability to kind of explore that with them, especially with the added options that being a fellow non-binary Kunari afforded me. Like, I really enjoyed that that happened to
Mhm.
coincidentally be the case. And I really didn't even feel like and I've been heartened to see that a lot of players who have actually played the game have been like, "I'm really shocked by how much backlash Tosh has gotten," because really
I
their
certainly am.
exploration of
I'm
their
in that camp.
identity was a very small part of I mean, not super small, but um it's not overtaking the game or even forced down your throat in a way that a lot of these critiques would have you believe. Like, so I've been validated seeing people play it and be like, I actually really love Tasha's character for
Well,
reasons
yeah, and you're also
beyond
talking about a plus 100-hour game where the total
exactly.
sum of the scenes where these conversations are actually happening could not be more than an hour combined. And
Yes,
I feel like
combined.
even that might be
Yes,
stretching it because most of these
yes.
conversations happen in scenes that are literally there's quests that are literally just a conversation. You
Hmm.
literally just go somewhere with your
Yes.
companion character and you have a conversation and that's the scene. It's not even tied to combat or a larger mission structure. So, yeah, it's just bananas to me that somebody can anyway,
Mhm,
continue.
100%. So my issue came about because for obvious reasons, I immediately started flirting with Tosh and thought that they would be my romantic choice. You can
Mhm.
flirt with all of your companions up until a point where you reach a level with them where there's a dialogue tree and you have to either commit to them exclusively or the relationship just becomes a friendship. Um, and so throughout the Tasha's story, I'm hearing about how, as a Kunari who was raised in Ravane, and a lot of this resonated too, like with me, just as a biracial person. Like there was a lot of talking with them about how they don't feel like one or the other, or they feel like they're not good and they're not Kunari enough, or they're not Ravani enough. Their mother has a very um at times toxic relationship with them. They've talked repeatedly about times where their mother has invalidated them, has forced them into performing the role of womanhood. They talked about a time that their mother tied them up with ropes and like there were blatantly abusive and toxic dynamics that they had with their mother and a sort of level of devotion and fear mixed in with their feelings towards their mother that I certainly related to, and so it got to a point where and I guess okay, I guess this is a spoiler for, character relationship decision, if you really wanna avoid, I would recommend, either stopping the podcast now or coming or skipping ahead like 10
Yeah,
minutes.
I'll put the timestamps in the
We'll put the
description. Yeah.
timestamps in the description, but the moment where you have to choose whether or not to commit fully to Tosh is a situation where, they're at a moment where they're struggling with their identity and they they just finished telling you that their mother um, has been incredibly hurtful to them and that they're terrified to come out to their mom and they talk about something that their mom did that I was like, "Oh my god, that's horrible." And your dialogue options, one of them is um encouraging them to stay within the Kunari religion and basically just like try to make it work. I didn't choose that option, so I don't know what exactly it said, but it was like either encourage Tosh to lean into the Kunari religion,
Mhm.
which they have described to me as meaning that they would need to um, kind of allow themselves to be placed within a rigid gender role, because that happens to be the way of their religion. The other is to embrace the fact that that they were brought up in Ravane, where it's a lot more like there's other Rivani who are non-binary or trans, and it's something where like they're allowed to basically don't worry about what your mom is saying, like be you, and
Mhm.
the rest will follow. And then the only romantic option is to say, well, your mother cares about you. And I sat there for like 10 minutes because I really wanted to romance Tosh. I don't know why I'm so emotional today.
I mean,
Um,
everything. All the stuff that's going on.
I could not, as someone who has fought hard to build a life for myself, even when my own relationship with my mother has become incredibly strained and at times completely broken. There is no version of me that would turn to another trans person who had the strength and vulnerability to open up to me about the abuse that they've gone through and say, "Well, it's because she cares about you." That completely goes against everything that I've been taught in therapy, everything that I've been taught about what is mine to carry versus not my fault. And that literally verges on gaslighting for me to say, like, well, it comes from a place of love. That's why she's hurting you. That's just blatantly untrue. I could not say it. And so I chose the friendship option that said I chose the option that was like, you were born in Ravane, you're raised here. Fuck what your mom says. Like you've got to follow your heart. And I could not believe that that was the friendship option, because what my
Yeah.
character Rook ended up saying was something like, there's like it was basically like, "There's nothing wrong with who you are. I'm honored to be on this journey with you, and, like,
Yeah.
I'm always here for you, and, you know, if your mom, I hope she comes around, but, like, it's not up to her to define who you are." I was like, "How the fuck is this the friendship option?"
Yeah.
So, that really it hurt me because I was joking to my partner, I was like, "Okay, clearly this was written by," 'cause I know that sorry, this is maybe a little shade, but, like, not really. It's really all good, but I was like, "This is clearly written by, trans folks who had, like, really accepting families, because like, how could
Mm,
you get through this whole dialogue and have the option be, "Well, she cares about you." It's like,
yeah.
ah,
Do you
you know
remember so this was an inflection point for me in whether or not I
Mhm,
romanced Tosh as well. Although I just generally the way that scene played out, I ultimately decided not to romance them, partially because I didn't wanna make that dialogue choice that you just
mhm,
articulated,
mm,
and I wanted to tell them to lean into their Ravani side,
mhm,
and partially because I that it comes so early and I really want like, I had a bit of like, "Well, I wanna see what's going on with the other people," like, I barely even started to flirt with them,
yeah.
um, and I also kind of felt like I don't know, part of me was like, "Man, Tasha's, like, really going through this right now." Like, I
Yeah,
don't
this is
think
not the
jumping into a
time.
romance is, like, what they need.
Yes.
So, I felt like that
Yes.
scene was a bit weirdly placed, it because
Yes.
but I wish I could remember exactly what your character says if you choose the romance option, because I think
Mhm.
what the dialogue line ended up being was
Mm,
less offensive, like,
okay.
blatantly than what the prompt showed, so I think it was a little bit of a misalignment with what the prompt says and what you actually say as Rook,
Okay.
but I
Yeah,
do agree with you, like, I'm 99% of the way there with agreeing with you that, like,
yeah.
I hated that that was what the romance hinged on, was whether or not you, because basically what you're doing is deciding whether or not Tosh should, like, burn bridges with their mom, And I don't
Yeah.
even think that should be my fucking decision, which again kind of comes
Agreed.
back to, I think it all kind of comes back to like, why am I the one making these decisions
Yes.
for these
Yes.
characters? Like,
Yes.
and again, it's like I think they lean too hard on the idea that like we want the player to have all the agency. I'm just like, if I am seeing this person as like, if I'm seeing this character that y'all have like very well crafted and like feels like
Yes.
a real person to me, and then you're saying like, well, now you decide if they
Mhm.
live authentically as themselves or whether or not they forgive their mom, and I'm like, but
I can't decide that.
I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to decide that for them.
Yeah.
Like I'm just supposed to be supportive
Yeah.
in this instance. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I validate everything that you're saying, and I think actually, like I was, yeah, I was probably being a little bit facetious earlier when I said there's nothing I would change with this game. Like
Sure, sure.
I do think that was a fuck up on their part.
Yeah.
But the way the scenes play out from there, because mainly the scenes don't dramatically change moving forward. You still get these, you get friendship scenes with the characters, whether or not you romance them.
Mhm.
And I've watched videos of like the romance version of the scene with the friend version of the scene, and you still get the opportunity to like help them stand up to their mom, and
Yeah.
like their mom comes over for dinner and is being a fucking bitch, and you can like tell
Uh-huh.
her she's being a fucking bitch. Like, so
Yeah.
like you still, saying that and like encouraging Tosh to like try to maintain a relationship with their mom
Yeah.
doesn't, if you go the romance option, it doesn't preclude you from being able to still, as that story develops, like engage with them about the problematic behavior of their mom. It doesn't like fully sign you
Yeah.
up for them to just like accept their mom's abuse. And yet still I think hinging that decision on the mom thing was it was just
Strange
a
choice. Yeah.
strange
Yeah.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
I
One
agree.
thing I will say though is I think I've ended up very happily in another romance, and it's like it was meant to be. But I will say there's something so trans and queer about, because like at first it was like immediately instant attraction. We start talking about gender on like day 2. We're basically emotionally U-hauling. Tosh throws me against a wall. We're like
Yeah.
fucking about to go make out.
Yep.
And then we end up being just queer platonic, like close friends. There was something so queer about that whole trajectory that I ended up enjoying even more, because I have my own, like, the person who cracks your egg ends up being a lot of times they end up being someone that you're like, do I want you? Do I want to be you? Like, I'm idolizing you. I'm putting you on a pedestal. Like, we're sharing the most intimate things with each other. Like, that person for a lot of people becomes like just there's a lot of emotion to sift through there. And so the way it all played out, like, we're so similar. We're both like these non-binary Kunari on this like quest to kill these two gods. Like, it just all felt very real in a different way. So I'm like still very happy with the fact
Yeah.
that we're friends. I think I'm like, you know what? This is the most realistic way this could go. I'm fine with this.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanna talk with you more about our favorite companions and who you romanced, but first, I need to take a quick break.
Great. Have
Be right
fun.
back. Okay, welcome back. So, who are you romancing and why is it Nev? If it's
uh,
Nev, that's just a guess.
so okay, this is just like a drama. This game has just become a drama, like rom-com drama for me. So
Oh boy. Do I
was
need to
Nev.
buckle in?
It
It
was
was
gonna
Nev.
be Nev.
It was gonna be Nev.
It was gonna be Nev. I mean, she's amazing. She's
Yeah.
just got the driest, like wittiest, like
Mhm.
kind of sexy detective vibe going on.
She's also
We were
very like, "I
together.
don't deserve happiness," which
Yeah,
is
that which you love, I know.
love that. Love somebody who doesn't think they deserve anything.
So we were flirting, like we were working on things after I decided to save Treviso instead of
Oh,
Minrathous,
wow, right, that's right.
and then Emmerich rolled up.
Oh, shit! You're just so into the necromancers lately. That's what it
Literally.
is.
Um, okay, it's funny because Emmerich rolls up, and I've got this 8-foot tall non-binary Canary thing going
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
and he's like
He's a
the
small little
most
man.
twee little,
He's so
like,
dapper, though.
he's like the human equivalent of, like, a bow tie, like, he's just so
That
charming
is
and
a great
polite.
description of Emmerich. I'm really like, if you don't know who Emmerich, like, Google Dragon Age Veilguard Emmerich. Spencer
You
fucking
know what?
nailed it. You should get a Pulitzer Prize just for
Oh my
that
god. Thank
fucking
you.
sentence.
Thank
Holy
you.
shit, that was great.
I was
Good
like,
job.
I don't know, like, I because my partner was watching me and he was like, "You're flirting with him?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just he's not really, like, my type, like, physically, even like me, Spencer." And then for my
Mhm.
Canary, I was like, "I'm gonna break this man in half, like, let's
Yeah,
be fucking for real."
yeah.
And then, his character, I fell in love with his character. He's so interesting, a
Mhm,
necromancer who's terrified of death,
mhm,
the type of pain and loss that he's gone through, the way that he feels about spirits and his comfort for being around death. I mean, a lot of the other characters are actually kind of like freaked out by him and
yeah.
almost kind of what's it called? Like a bit derogatory towards the fact that he's a necromancer
Mhm,
and his kind of quiet dignity and the way that he kind of has this little edge, like he has power and he'll kind of hint sometimes at this kind of like, oh, you don't even know like what I'm capable of. And I was like, oh my God, he's hot. And I sort of at first I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I need to make a new character for this to work. But then I realized my Kunari had shifted from being like a close combat like battle mage to being a necromancer.
mhm.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm a necromancer mage. He's a necromancer.
It's
Like this
meant to
might
be.
work.
It's meant to be.
And he also has this aspiration to become, like, basically an eldritch horror boyfriend, and after Arcane, I'm like, "Who doesn't want an eldritch horror boyfriend?"
Oh my
So,
god.
like, I'm, like, all in. Actually, like, an hour like, 10 minutes before we jumped on to stream, I made things official and committed to Emmerich, so, like, I'm very happy. That's
I don't wanna spoil it. Have you haven't gotten to have you gotten to any of the so as you advance a companion quest line, you reach, like, a big pivotal quest where, again, inexplicably, they have you make a huge decision for the companion, and
Mhm.
usually after you do that, they become a hero of the Veilguard, which it basically is just like the game's way of noting that, like, you've completed this companion's quest line.
Okay.
You'll still get little, like, conversations and moments with them after that that pop up, like, little companion quests that you can do with them, but the
Yeah.
meat of their story has concluded,
Mhm.
and you've helped them, like, take some next step in the plot that surrounds them specifically in their arc.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to that with Emmerich yet?
So we haven't gotten to the choice, but as
Okay.
part of the growing romance, he has confided in me that he is he has been wanting his whole life or been exploring the fact that he wants to become a lictor or I think they
Lich,
use
yeah,
both words. Lich, sorry, lich.
yeah.
I'm like, "Ah."
Yeah.
But it's basically like his soul separates from his body, and it goes through this cleansing ritual and some other shit, and then it basically re-enters his body, and he becomes this immortal, undead person,
Mhm.
mage, being.
Yeah.
And that he's alluded that there would be changes to his appearance, but the main thing would be that if we were to be romantically involved, he's gonna live forever, and I'm obviously gonna be mortal. So we've broached the subject, which I also found
Yeah,
fascinating.
that's
Like,
pretty cool.
there's just such a new dynamic to introduce to a romance in a game, and the way
Mhm.
that it's approached as like he's talking to me right now about like it's something he's been working towards, but it's also like he's not sure if he wants to do it. There's lots of considerations involved.
The
Um,
process alone could kill him, which
could
scares
kill
him.
him.
Yeah.
So like all of it is just so rich. I'm like, yes, I'm leaning towards. If that's the thing is, I'm trying to parse. Is this something he really wants, or is it a bad idea? I don't know. So I'm still trying to figure that out.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing at some point I'm gonna have to push him in one direction or the other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that that's what they were teeing up throughout his companion quest line. Anyway, though, this isn't even for the podcast anymore. We're just talking.
Yeah,
You come talk to me
yeah.
after you've gotten that quest line, because
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I, I don't know, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting
yeah,
to see how
yeah,
that cookie crumbles there for you.
yeah. So give
Um,
me the tea. Who are you? Like, what's going on with you?
Oh, I'm hooking up with Nev. I was
Hell
generally
yeah.
like a big flirt with everybody.
Yeah.
Except for Emmerich. I don't know. I just and maybe it is too Emmerich is older, which I think is really interesting. He's
Mhm,
like he's middle-aged. Which
mhm.
is another thing that you don't see super often in
Yeah,
games
love
like this where
that.
you actually have like a party member and especially a romance option who's
Mhm.
older. So that's really interesting. But to me, I don't know, just like from the outset, my dynamic with him was very like, oh, we're friends, and
Yeah.
like also like kind of like I wanted to like get advice from him, and so like I don't know, like he felt
Mhm.
like an older like mentor kind of figure.
Yeah.
Um so anyway, that's what my relationship is with Emmerich has been. But basically everybody else I flirted with at least a few times. Um yeah, so I settled on Nev. Nev is she's also a shadow dragon, or she's worked closely with the
Mhm.
shadow dragon. And she's from the same town that my rook is from, Minrathous. So
Hometown
we have that history.
romance.
Hometown
Yeah.
romance. She's like a PI, like a private
Yeah.
investigator, basically. But she also has like committed herself to disrupting the like corrupt systems of power in the city of Minrathous. She's a mage, which again, I don't fully grasp all of the lore, but basically, like mages have really fucked stuff up in
Mm.
Tevinter, where Minrathous is at,
Mm.
and generally have like tended to be very corrupt, and they get positions of power, like the whole social structure, like privileges mages in the systems of power, and then they tend to abuse those privileges and abuse their power to like shit all over non mages,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
enslave them and stuff like that. And so her being a mage and deciding to like kind of work in the shadows to disrupt systems of power and use her privilege for good, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um she's also just like, yeah, she's well portrayed. She is pretty like she like dodges all of your she'll like flirt
Yeah.
back, but in a way of like, oh, like we're just being silly, like this doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything for a long time. And so when the story starts to take a turn to her like you being like you doubling down and being like, no, I'm pretty serious about this, and her being like, oh, fuck, like me too, but like we can't do this, like we got all this shit going on, which
Yeah.
feels like pretty real to me for somebody to be resistant to like a
Mhm.
romance in this situation. I felt like most of the other characters were pretty ready to just go for it. And with her, she was like, okay, but like, really, there's like a lot of shit going on right now. We should probably be worrying about that. Like, what is this? Like, we're just gonna
Totally.
break each other's hearts. So I
She's
found that
so
interesting
noble.
so far. Yeah, she's very noble. Yeah, I don't know. I really sweated like which direction I was gonna go, and really held out on making a decision so I could see more of the initial scenes. Um,
Yeah.
I really loved the some of the early like flirting scenes that you got with Harding. You can
Yes.
romance Lace
Love
Harding.
Harding.
She's a character from previous games. She's a dwarf archer. And her storyline in this game is really focused around there's like an incident earlier in the game where she gets the ability to kind of hear the voice of the stone. And as a dwarf who doesn't live underground, that's like an interesting cultural thing for her that they explore in the game, and what that
Mhm.
means and what voice she's actually hearing and the history of the dwarves all kind of comes out to her story. So she's kind of going through this like epic crazy shit. But she's just so earnest about, or like she's very like surprised that anybody is flirting with her, which makes it sweet. So I found some of those initial scenes like cute, but
Yeah.
ultimately didn't choose to like lock it in with her. Um, yeah, I don't know. I like all of the companions in the game.
Yeah.
Who do you
Love our
usually what
so
were
I
you
was
gonna
gonna
say?
say, I also love my short king, Lucanus.
Lucanus, yeah. Lucanus is a crow. He's an assassin. He loves coffee. I think if I hadn't gone for Nev, I probably would have gone for Lucanus. But
Mhm.
you referenced you make a decision within the first like third of the game of one of two towns to save, and one town is the one that Nev is from, and one is the town that Lucanus is from. And whichever person you don't decide to help, they're kind of tough to like build your relationship back up with them after the fact,
Yeah.
understandably so. Even though again, it's like an entire city is being attacked. Like,
Why am I the one
why am I as
factor?
one? Yeah, I'm the one factor deciding whether or not the city gets absolutely decimated, or
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
manages to come through relatively unscathed. Stuff like that is weird.
Yeah.
Um, We've been talking for like over an hour, and there's still so much that we could probably dig into on this game. I wanted to touch a little bit about the gameplay. I think we need to talk about the gameplay
Oh, yeah, that's
because
a thing.
this does, yeah, it's just a game. Let's talk about, I don't know, the
Who's
gameplay.
kissing who?
Who's
Oh, right,
kissing who?
gameplay,
That is, I
okay.
mean, if you're here listening to Pixel Therapy, you know the most important thing is who's kissing who in this game. Who am I going to get to kiss? But with that conversation, pretty much concluded. Now let's talk about the actual gameplay. Uh, no, so this game departs a bit from past Dragon Age games, which I think have leaned a little more towards. There's action elements. There's third person or isometric view in the previous games, and you have some direct action elements, but they also were a lot more strategy ish.
Mhm.
Tactical ish, like picking a move, waiting on a timer to reset to do the move again, which again, that does exist in this game, but let me elaborate for a second. So like what I remember of Inquisition's combat is it almost feeling a little bit like Diablo, in the sense that
Mm.
I was selecting a move from a series of moves at the bottom, and then like literally watching the thing spin up so that I could pick a move again. And you're controlling your companions a bit in that regard too. You're like selecting what moves they're going to use and waiting for the cooldown to reset.
Mm.
But in between the cooldowns, there really isn't anything you can do. You just have to wait for the cooldown to come back. In Veilguard, there's a lot more direct action that they allow you to do, to the point where the game actually could be played as and almost feels much more like a hack and slash. You have a
Yes.
square button, you have a triangle button, that's your light, your heavy attack. You have a block button, you have a parry, you have a projectile that in my case with the warrior, I can like basically like throw my shield is essentially what happens. It's depicted strangely because I use a two-hander, so I don't actually have a shield, so it's just kind of like
Mm.
a flash of light that I can throw out. But anyway, that's the rough idea of it is that you're throwing your shield, so you get like a projectile attack. Um, so you have all of that just on the sticks that you can do in real time. But then you also have a radial menu that you can pull up to engage your companions. You always bring two companions with you on every quest, and for the most part you get to pick who those two companions are. If you're doing a quest that specifically ties to one of the companions, you have to bring them, but otherwise you're pretty much open-ended to choose any companion you want. So that's how you select their moves. Now they will
Mhm.
continue attacking even when you're not selecting moves for them, but it's how you select which of their abilities, I think is what they call them, that you want
Yeah.
to use. And then you also have your own set of abilities. And those are the moves that are tied to cooldowns that feel more like
Mhm.
specials. You even have one that's called an ultimate. You have to build up a special meter for. And for the other abilities, you fill up what's called a, well, I don't maybe this is different for the other classes, but for me as a warrior, it's called a rage meter. Is that the same?
Oh,
Oh,
no.
interesting. So you're building up what?
Maybe
Mana?
wait, see, y so the ultimate is a rage
No,
meter?
no, I'm talking about just my general abilities. Yeah, so I could
Oh,
be
okay,
describing that so
it's
okay,
mana, yeah.
okay, yeah. Yeah, so for me as the warrior, I'm building up a rage to be able to
Okay,
use my
got it.
abilities. Yeah, in Spencer's case, it's mana. What's the other class? Oh, there's a rogue. The three
Yes.
classes you can choose from are warrior, mage, or rogue. Neither of us played as a rogue, so I can't speak to what that is, but same idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
as you fight, you're filling up this meter, and then you can use the abilities. Um, and the game has these things called detonations. So one move and I honestly I wish they explained the detonations a little bit better. It took me a while
Mm,
to really wrap my head around
mhm.
how these worked or what actually would trigger them.
Oh,
But
okay, mhm. Yeah.
at least it did for me. Like I just didn't think like the game explained it. I had to like play around with it a bit
No,
and figure
yeah,
out how it
yeah,
worked. And I felt like
yeah,
that seems like that would have been easy enough to tutorialize. But
yeah.
anyway, you might have a move that applies weakness to an enemy. Weakness is like oh my gosh, what's the word
An
I'm looking
as
for?
advantage, it's a s I think they call
Uh
it advantages in the or it's a yeah, a state that you
yeah, there's a specific word they use for it. Anyway, you apply weakness to an enemy.
condition?
Condition maybe. It's not triggering for me. It doesn't matter. We're gonna move on.
Yeah.
You apply weakness to an enemy. One of your companions, if you've planned properly, will probably have a move that detonates weakness. So that means that if you hit the enemy first, you hit them with the status of weakness. Um, now you tell your companion to hit them with their move that detonates weakness. The enemy will temporarily freeze. They'll be stunned out of whatever move they were in the middle of doing, and this like cool light up pattern will appear on the floor, and they'll kind of explode. They'll take a bunch of damage themselves, and then any enemies caught within that area of effect also take damage.
Mhm.
And so I think the way the game's designed, way combat's really is designed, is that you should be trying to stack up these combo moves and cause these detonations as much as possible to do a lot of damage across, like very quickly across a lot of enemies.
Yeah.
So you're with your companions, you're getting to put skill points into they each have their own little skill tree. They each have I think it's like 5 different skills,
Mhm.
and you can only have 3 abilities equipped at a time. So they have 5 to choose from, and you're going to equip 3, and same for you as you build out your skill tree. You might have more than 5, but you only get to pick 3 to be equipped at any given time. And so you can build out the other companions to fit to match well with your build or to match well with another companion that you want to use them with and tee up the detonations and the moves that you want to tee up. So it's a really cool combo system. And I really like how fluid they made the controls for that. Because you literally just on PlayStation, I just hold R1. It brings up this radial menu. And what I'm doing is with the right stick, I'm flicking through the different enemies on the screen. So I can just like move
Mhm.
around. It kind of freezes time for a second. I move through, I select the enemy that I want to target. And then with the left stick, I pick which move I want to target them with. Whether, on one side of the screen, I have one companion's moves. On the other side of the screen, I have my other companion's moves. And at the bottom, I have mine. I pick the move that I want to assign. I can even pick multiple moves at the same time. Now, once one person does a move, that person is on cooldown. But if I have 2 companions and myself, I could target an enemy. I could assign one move from one companion, one move from myself, and one move from the other companion. And then I let go of the button, and it just all 3 of those moves happen at the same time. So that's pretty neat. I'm
Oh.
I'm causing a revelation for Spencer. There are also shortcut keys to be able to do the moves without opening the radial menu, but I haven't learned those. I just noticed in the menu that they exist. But yeah, it makes the combat super fluid, and you're not being forced into like a turn-based kind of structure. It just makes it all stay like really action heavy and engaging. And so even though
Yeah.
like my general build and strategy has probably not changed for the last 50 hours, and like I don't even know
Mhm.
that I've switched out gear in the last 20 or 30 hours, like it that just the combat's just really fun. Like, it's just fun to blow up the enemies and to get everything
Yeah.
to line up and then hit somebody the right way, and then they just, like, totally they had this full health bar plus armor, and it just all melts away really fast.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so
yeah,
funny. I'm, like, constantly switching gear, like, I think because I don't know, I'm constantly with this with your skill tree as you level up, you're spending points to unlock different moves and different abilities that you can equip. I'm, like, constantly rebuilding, like, refunding all my points and reclassing, myself, like, within the skill
interesting.
tree, there's 3 different specialties that you can eventually, move towards, like, one favors like, the one I basically back in is, like, the necromancy, one is, like, a lot of fire-based magic, and then one is, like, um, storm and fire, and then the other is, like, ice and lightning, and I think, like, for situations where like, I know that I'm about to go into this long mission with enemies that are weak to fire. I'll, like, switch out from necromancy to, like, a fire-based mage, and I'll go about it like that. So I'm constantly switching my gear as well, because some gear is gonna favor, like, certain types of magic over others. But the downside of that is that I feel like it's interesting to me, like, as a warrior, like, you're so strong. I feel like for me that the the sacrifice for having the ability to, like, have these very different power sets is, like, when I get hit, it's, like, brutal. Like, I die a lot, and I lose my potions a lot, and I typically
Mm,
always have to have a companion who one of their spell slots is used that you can have your companions throw you health potions, and I pretty much have to have that because, like, I just, I can't take many hits as a mage. So
mhm.
it's just interesting, dynamic that you're speaking towards, but, my I was making a face because my main complaint with the combat is for how hack and slash it is and how much combat happens throughout missions. It's like my partner will look over and he's like, "I feel like you're always fighting." Like,
Yeah,
like the
it's
mission
it's a lot.
is a lot. It's a lot of enemies coming at you. I find that I'm constantly pausing basically because you have to press R1 to pull up the command wheel and tell your companions to use certain moves. But, like, are you saying in one instance of pausing, you can select multiple move I didn't realize you could do multiple. How do you do
Mhm.
multiple?
You just select it because you go to it and you press X.
Oh, you press X. Oh my god.
Have you
I
just been
thought you
going
had
and then
to
letting go?
I've been and this is the thing, yes, I've been highlighting it with my joystick and then
Uh-huh.
letting go, and
Mm.
what keeps happening is if I if I don't manage to release the menu, like, if I move my joystick without releasing, it doesn't take, so I have to do it again.
Yeah,
So
that would
I
be really
my main
frustrating.
one of my main complaints was like, "Oh, it's so annoying, I have to pull up this weapon wheel thing, but if I'm not exactly holding my joystick in the right way, nothing happens, and I have to
Yeah.
keep opening it like 3 or
Well,
4 times." Okay,
so
that's great to
who
know.
do you think had the bigger revelation here and the worse overall game experience? Me not realizing that you could have this whole gender identity conversation because I didn't pick the fucking mirror up in the first hour of the game,
Ah,
or like you struggling with the combat because you thought you had to
ah.
just hover over it and then let go of the R1 button.
Oh my god. So much to uncover.
Yeah, yeah, truly. We always learn something in these conversations.
That's truly. Okay, well, that changes things
Yeah,
for me.
yes, it does.
Okay, great. Good.
Um, aside from combat, I think the game is not open world, which is something I've heard
Mhm,
people complain about. They really wanted this to be open world. I think past Age games have been open world, and this is game is much more open area. You
mhm.
fast travel to a city, or a place, and you can run around that area pretty freely. But you can't just run from one area straight over to the next area. You have to go back to your map and fast travel. That doesn't really bother me that much. The game didn't say it was open world, so I don't. I didn't come into it expecting that. But again, that might just be me not being a Dragon Age, like a long time Dragon Age fan. Uh, there is a lot of exploration within those area maps, and, actually, a lot of the missions do end up sending you, to a unique area that you're not necessarily going to be able to visit again, and those feel like pretty, like, on rails, like, kind of linear, quote, unquote, like, hallway designed levels
Mhm.
where you're just moving through a space linearly, but even in those spaces, you can still explore and get off the beaten path, but it's way more like, I don't know, I don't mean to only use this as a comparison point, but it's a game I have a lot of familiarity with, like old school God of War, like PS2,
Mm.
PS3 God of War,
Mhm.
where, yeah, things are on rails, but like, oh, that door over there is open. If I go in there, there might be a chest or something to pick up. And
Yeah,
then you go in there and there is a chest or something to pick up, but
yeah,
that was specifically designed for me to find it and feel good about finding it. And it wasn't like I had this huge area to explore and I found the thing.
yeah.
Um, that's all working for me, but again, it does kind of come back to the thing we were talking about at the beginning, which is that the game is very much designed to be fun, which I don't
Mhm.
mean as a critique. I don't mean it to sound like a critique, but it's another way in that it's like it's a video game ass video game. Like that
Yes.
feels very it's very old school game design in those moments, and I think it really like shows up as a video game in those moments. It's not trying to be realistic. It's not trying to do anything other than present you with an engaging set of events and activities that are fun to complete, whether or not they feel like immersive, maybe is the way
Yeah.
to put it. Um, are there any other gameplay elements there that you wanted to shout out or how's that all working for you, that flow of go out, do a
Yeah.
mission, come back to base, have a conversation with your
Mhm.
companion, pick up another quest, go back out. It's got a good like, I'm enjoying that kind of, like,
Yeah, it's a
grind and
satisfying
cycle.
loop.
Yeah.
Mhm, and it's a nice I think the period of conversation and checking in on each of your companions, it's a nice break from basically the on constant onslaught of combat, and then there's, like, a bit of a nice, like, reprieve, so it doesn't get super tedious. um I think sometimes, I think we talked about how things can feel a bit formulaic, and I do think at times it's like, okay, if I'm gonna fight a dragon, I pretty much know what to expect from the move set. If I'm gonna fight this horde of whatever enemy group is coming at me, like there's nothing, like I guess back to the God of War example, it's like every fight feels completely different. You have no idea what to expect. You've gotta
In God
adapt
of
to what's
War,
going
yeah.
on. Yeah, in God of War. In the Veilguard, it's like it's a lot of the same thing in a different setting.
Mhm.
Um, but again, like,
Yeah.
that's not really why I'm here for,
Mhm,
like, next gen, next level combat. Like, I'm here
mhm,
for the writing and the
mhm.
relationships and other stuff,
Yeah,
so,
it's
like, it's
another thing
fine.
in the game that, like, checks the box of being perfectly acceptable and fun
Yeah.
without doing anything that's pushing the envelope of
Yeah,
what a game
yeah,
can be forward or making me think too hard or even, at least in my case, in most cases, working too hard. Like, I've
yeah,
created this build that I've kind of maxed out for myself, and I'm kinda just gonna go in there and wreck shop unless it's, like,
yeah.
a pretty serious boss fight, or occasionally I'll get, some enemies that just kind of, like, circle up around me, and they keep with the one thing with my two-hander build is that I can't just defend.
Mm,
I can only parry to block something,
mm,
or I can dodge,
mm,
but I don't have the ability to just, like, put a shield up and take a blow.
mhm.
It has to be a perfectly timed parry, or I'm avoiding it entirely. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I can get kind of stun locked into getting hit multiple times, but
Mhm.
unless something like that happens, yeah, I'm pretty much just mowing through anything that comes my way. And some of
Yeah.
these fights as you get later in the game, like I'm level 45 or 46 right now, and so I'm, fighting these enemies that are 45 or 46, and they all have armor.
Oh,
or if
yeah.
they're a spirit entity, they have this thing called a barrier that's basically just like a
Mhm.
doubled health bar that you have to whittle down before you get to
Yep.
their actual health bar, and so they're spongy as fuck, and it's just like yeah, I've definitely had a few moments, especially when I was playing yesterday, where I'm like, I'm trying to solve this puzzle in this area, and every time I come back to this specific room,
Ugh,
the enemies are
yeah.
respawning, and they're
Yes.
spongy as fuck, so there's, like, 10 guys, and even though it's like my health is not being threatened, there's no threat to me dying here, but I have to spend the, like, 6, 7 minutes to have the same
Yeah.
exact fight over again. That is getting a little long in the tooth for me. We'll see how that
Yes.
goes as I get closer and closer to the end game. And the game, like, keeps throwing more and more combat at me, but, that was 2 o'clock in the morning last night when I just wanted
Sure.
to solve the puzzle and get the chest.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I'm still really
So
having fun
real.
with the fight.
Yeah, I relate, I relate. I guess I'd say my one other mechanic complaint is that X, cross, whatever you wanna call it, on PS5,
It's
the X.
X. It's X. We're not calling it
Officially,
cross.
it's
I don't
cross.
give a fuck officially. I don't give a fuck officially.
Um,
PlayStation's not sitting in my living room telling me what to call my buttons.
the X button, uh,
Thank you.
for us for us normal folk, it's, the same button is interact and jump. And that has killed me at times because I'm trying to
Oh
open a
my god.
chest
Yeah,
and I
me
end
every
up
time I
falling
try
off
to
a
open a
cliff.
chest.
Like, I'm like, "Okay, like, do these have to be the same button?"
Uh,
So that's all. That's my small complaint, and sometimes that gets in my way.
I didn't know you were gonna say you fall off a cliff. For me, it's just I wanna open this chest, and instead I'm just hopping. I'm just doing little bunny
Jumping,
hops.
yeah.
Oh, little bunny hop next to the chest. It's like my little excited thing that I do when I find a
Yeah, I'm
chest.
just so
That's my
happy.
that's my headcanon. It's
We're
just like,
role playing,
"Yee!
yeah. Yeah.
I found a chest! Guys, I found a chest!" Have a little
Yeah.
jump. Oh, what if this is the last Dragon Age game we ever get?
You know, if it is, then I'm happy that we had a game that in the face of a terrible, terrible time in history and the treatment of difference and diversity and in all of its ways. I mean, we talked mostly about gender diversity, but there's also
Mhm.
lots of great bodily diversity.
Yeah.
There's disability inclusion.
Mhm.
There's even if it's not spoken aloud, I think there's neurodivergence at play here. That's nice to see reflected. There's you know, different ages, different, races, it's I think it's, a game that really felt good to play, and so, like, if it is the last game, you know, I think, it's sad, but also I'm happy with the last installment that we got. It was
Mhm.
not a failure in any way for me playing it.
Yeah. I
Um
agree with that. And I think, I don't as I said higher out or, like, earlier in the conversation, I don't have this great love or appreciation for, Dragon Age specifically. So, for me, being, relatively new to the world to come into this, I mean, yeah, I would happily play more games in this world. I also I guess I'm more sad about the loss of the team, like, that, all these
yeah.
writers are just gone, thrown to the wind. Like, the people who put this game together have been well and truly scattered, and for it to have come together despite all the back and forth that they were put through by fucking money people who can't make up their goddamn mind about what they want the game to be, um that they still put this together and put it out is, like, super impressive, and so the fact that, like, that team is not gonna get a chance to make anything else
Mhm.
together again is a bummer, but I don't think I'm gonna specifically mourn the loss of Dragon Age. Um, it's a cool world but I do think ultimately, like,
Mhm.
more like, more cool worlds can be designed, like, it doesn't have to specifically be Dragon Age to get this. I guess I'm just sad at what has happened to BioWare broadly. Because if there had not been shareholder fuckery
Yeah.
and they had
Yeah.
been allowed to just continue to make really interesting and complex RPGs that were really focused on this idea of, like, what if you were just a person and your companions were just people and, like, we really, like, played up this idea of you all building relationships with each other as you try to save the world, like, that would've been cool to continue to see, but I don't have a lot of hope for what this next Mass Effect game is gonna be, um, considering how they've gutted the team
Mhm.
there, and yeah, I don't think it specifically has to be Mass
Yeah.
Effect or it specifically has to be Dragon Age. I'm just bummed out about the slow decline and the gutting of what BioWare could have been, or,
Yeah.
like, the potential that they once
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
and where they could have gone from there,
Yeah.
but these fuckheads at the top with their money interests and thinking that you've gotta make a game like this if we're gonna make enough money, and then shoehorning creative people into these paths, and yeah, it's sad. So that for me is,
Yeah.
like, the
Yeah.
loss of it. Um, it would not
Yeah.
surprise me if in 5, 6, 7, 8 years we see another Dragon Age game just because these fucking money fucks can't let any IP truly die. Like I guess part
Mhm.
of me is, like, bitterly like, "I don't think this will be the last Dragon Age game. I think a number of years will go by and they'll fucking trot out its corpse again." But is anybody who was actually
Mhm.
involved with what Dragon Age was meant to be, or even with this particular game, gonna be around for that? No, probably not.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you were talking, I think one of the reasons that's occurring to me now that I think this game has felt so good to play is that really what I love most about it and what sticks with me most is that it is about this chosen family of companions coming together, forming a community against an impossible uh situation, which is like basically the theme of, I mean, has always been the theme throughout human history. Like none of the things we're going through now are new. Um, and it's always been about, finding each other, and that's how you build resistance is through community. There's no world where one person alone saves everyone. And I think
And
that's one of the most
specifically
beautiful.
oh, sorry, finish your thought. I'm not trying to
No,
cut you off.
please go ahead.
I just wanna say, like, I
Cut me
think
off.
specifically that felt are you sure? Like, keep going.
No, yeah, no, that wasn't sarcastic. Like,
Okay. It's like, "Yeah, go ahead, cut me off." But no, but you saying that is like, I had a note in our file that we just lost because we spent, fucking 45 minutes talking about, companions, but it was a great conversation. Um, but, like, one thing that I think that this game does that I think BioWare has done in their games broadly is the team that you put together in the game that comes together, and this I think this was true in Mass Effect too, is, like, they're diverse cultures and peoples who come together and make each other stronger. Like, it's always about coalition building in these
yeah,
games and about
yeah.
collaborating across difference. And that's also part of why I
Mhm.
think it's fucking insane to me that people are like, "Well, this was the woke Dragon Age." Like, have you
Mhm.
played any of these games? They have always been like, if anything, I don't even know what the fuck woke means, but, like, these games have always been about understanding each other across difference and then how diversity actually, like, increases our strength. So why wouldn't,
Yeah,
as these games move into a modern age, they continue to lean more and more into what diversity means in our real world today and bringing that into the game space for the
yeah,
representation of who exists in these games? Like, your companions in Veilguard are diverse from across the region of, Thetis. Like, they're all from different places and different factions with different cultural backgrounds and a different, like, perspective on life, and yet you are all coming together, and in fact, the game repeatedly focuses on this idea that in order for you to defeat the main evils of the game, the evil gods, uh, you have to help your companions face their challenges so that they can be the strongest
yes.
and best versions of themselves. Like, that is, like, the lesson that Varric is constantly trying to instill in your Rook as the leader of this group, is that you have to help and support your teammates. You have to meet them where they are, you have to understand where they're coming from, and then you all are gonna be the best version of yourselves, and we're gonna be able to fight the evil elven
Mhm.
gods. I don't know exactly who the evil elven gods are. The billionaire class. All right, say the evil elven gods are the billionaire class, and we've all got a coalition build across all of our differences and
100%.
unite against the common enemy.
Totally.
And
Totally.
that is something that I think has been integral to BioWare's games, whether it's Mass Effect or
Yeah.
Dragon Age, and yeah, sad to see that go. But
Yeah.
it's been
I
really
wanna
lovely in this game. Sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna stop
completely
talking over you.
agree. No, 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 no. I love when you talk. I just wanted to close with this quote from Cheryl
Mm.
She, who is was a writer on Dragon Age the Veilguard, and they posted a couple posts on Blue Sky. I don't know what they're called over there on Blue Sky, what the name is for them.
Couple of
Missives.
they blued the sky.
I blued it. Um, and they said, in response to kind of all the feelings of uncertainty about where the series is going, they said, a cool French woman dropped a cool quote from Camus on me today. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. We're going through it right now. It's a lot, everywhere. And they go on to say, but DA isn't dead. There's fic, there's art, there's the connections we made through the games and because of the games. Technically, EA and BioWare owns the IP, but you can't own an idea no matter how much they want to. DA isn't dead because it's yours. I can't do anything without crying today, but I just felt like that perfectly encapsulates everything that we've been talking about. Like
Mhm.
everything is a lot right now, personally, socially, globally. Also, this is happening with Dragon Age specifically, and also that rallying cry of you can never own an idea, it belongs to each of us, and we will carry that with us no matter what happens. You know what? Enough said. Mic drop.
Mic drop. That's a great place to end it. Time is up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. I really imagine today's conversation should have inspired some thoughts and feelings of your own, and if it didn't, holy cow, are you okay? Are you alive? If you want more Pixel Therapy, come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can where you can sign up for free to stay up to date on everything we have going on, including our weekly streaming schedule, or subscribe for as little as $2 a month, and you can snag that sweet monthly bonus episode. Also, be sure to check out our Let's Play series, Pixel Therapy Plays, on Pixel Therapy Pod, on the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel. I can no longer talk. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications every time we go live there. And of course, you can also support the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and following us on social media. We're still trying to figure out what that looks like for us in the current hellscape. But yeah, that stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it just as much.
Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. So this week, I wanted to spotlight the Trans Defense Fund Los Angeles. This is basically in light of the devastating wildfires that have displaced so many people over the past month in Southern California. As well as continued restrictions on trans rights. You may have heard over the past week about a trans woman in Los Angeles who goes by username Gentle Reality on TikTok. She was fully denied a passport renewal this week and had all of her documents confiscated by the passport office. As many trans folks across the country are finding their requests to update necessary travel and identity documents with their correct gender identifiers are getting denied, which, you know, limiting your ability to travel freely is kind of, in my opinion, like a very basic human right. And to not be able to leave the country is like a very scary thing. So she lives in LA as well. So anyway, the Trans Defense Fund is a mutual aid resource and network collecting info about ways to help community members, as well as distributing safety kits and funds to trans folks directly across the city. You can check them out at transdefensefundla.org or on Instagram at Trans Defense Fund LA. Don't defund trans, fund trans at transdefensefundla.org.
Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today, folks. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back soon with some more
Pixel
Pixel
therapy.
Therapy. Bye-bye.
Bye.